Good evening and welcome to this Tuesday, September 4th, 2018 meeting of the Raymore Planning and Zoning Commission. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Let me remind commissioners, please make sure your microphone is lighted green and speak into the microphone for the record. We have no personal appearances scheduled this evening. One item on the consent agenda, which is approval of minutes from our August 21st, 2018 meeting. And Mr. Gress, I'm just slightly puzzled. I have another paper copy. Is this identical to the one in the packet?
That was the same minutes that were included in your packet.
Okay, no corrections noted. Thank you. Just wanted to make sure. So I would entertain either a motion. Oh, okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Just remind
It's a dirty job, but somebody's got to keep me straight. Let's call roll. Commissioner Wiggins.
Present.
Commissioner Armstrong. Commissioner Bowie. Commissioner Crane.
Present.
Commissioner Fizer.
Present.
Commissioner Meiske. Commissioner Urquia.
Present.
Mayor Turnbow.
Present.
And Commissioner Faulkner is present. So we do have a quorum. Thank you for that. Now, as we proceed, no personal appearances scheduled this evening. Now we'll get into the consent agenda. I would entertain either a motion to approve minutes from the August 21st, 2018 meeting or accept the consent agenda as you wish.
I'll move to accept the minutes from the August 21st meeting, as well as the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Sure. Motion by Commissioner Urquia, second by Commissioner Wiggins to accept minutes of the August 21st, 2018 meeting as presented and accept the consent agenda. All those in favor, raise a hand, please. Five in favor. Any opposed? And abstentions? Commissioner Crane. All right. And nothing this evening under unfinished business. So that will take us into new business this evening, case 18014, the 2019 to 2023 capital improvement program. This case will require a public hearing. And Mr. Zur, if you tell me it's okay, I won't open the public hearing until after we've had the presentation.
You may open the public hearing anytime you'd like.
Well, I think I'll wait until we have the
Very good.
presentation. Mr. Gress, do you have anything to say, or shall we invite Mr. Feuerborn up?
I would invite City Manager Jim Feuerborn to make a presentation on the CIP.
That sounds great. Mr. Feuerborn?
Good evening.
Hi.
Chairman Faulkner, Your Honor, Mayor Turnbow, members of the Commission. The 2019 to 2023 Capital Improvement Program is hereby transmitted for your consideration and possible recommendation on to the City Council. Before I start on the projects that are going to be included or that are included and recommended for the CIP for next year, I'd like to talk just real briefly about the revenues that are associated and fund the various aspects that go into the CIP. There are really three primary areas that are funding sources for the CIP projects. Four of the funds, the Transportation Fund, Capital Improvement Fund, Stormwater Sales Tax Fund, and Park Sales Tax Fund, see as their revenues sales taxes exclusively coming into those funds. The transportation fund has a 1% sales tax that goes into it. The other three funds all have a 0.5 cent sales tax that funds them up. The building fees and permits also fund 4 of the funds. That includes park fee in lieu. If we don't take actual land, there's a formula by which parkland is turned over, or park funds are garnered in that fund. The excise tax fund, the water connection, and the sewer connection fee funds are all funded by fees and permits. The last 2 funds, which include the Enterprise Capital Maintenance Fund and the Building and Equipment Replacement Fund, are actually funded by transfers out of operational and other capital funds that go into those. Those are the sources of revenue that we use for the CIP. The proposed 2019 capital budget, which most of the members know is actually the first year of the 5-year CIP and the primary year where we're programming projects, and the ones that I'll go through with you all this evening. For the 2019 capital year, we are recommending and proposing $3,949,200 worth of projects. That represents 24 discrete projects in 2019 alone. I'm going to be going off of page 10 at the bottom of the pages. You see page 10, and it's the Capital Improvement Program by Funding Source and Project, a 5-year summary. And I'll primarily focus my attention again on 2018, 2019 for your consideration. But I'll be giving you page numbers. It jumps around a little bit, so I'll give you a page number where the discrete project is actually listed as we go forward. First project that is being proposed for next year is Park Maintenance Facility Door Access System. That's on page 22. This is an $8,400 project and actually goes with the next project that is in there, which is the Building Door Access System, which is on page 18 for $36,000, budgeted at $36,000. When these 2 projects are complete, all of the public buildings that the city has, including Public Works, Parks Maintenance Facility, Centerview here at City Hall, will all have the exact same compatible door access system associated with them. For City Hall and Public Works especially, that's a maintenance project because the door system that we have is showing its age. It's reaching the end of its useful life, so we want to bring it into compatibility with the newer systems that we're putting in. Municipal Circle light replacement on page 20. For $50,000, this calls for changing out and matching the light poles that we replaced in the last couple of years around City Hall and in City Hall's parking lot on Broadmoor and Skyline. Those have also reached the end of their useful life. And then the City Hall exterior painting project calls for totally repainting and refurbishing of gutters on both the front and back of City Hall here. None of that has been done since City Hall's been built. A lot of mold buildup, a lot of cracks in it, so it's in need of some maintenance to keep the building fresh, if you will. Within the Transportation Fund, annual curb replacement program, you'll remember that several years ago we increased the curb replacement program to $400,000. A portion of it comes out of the Transportation Fund, and then we in recognition of the fact that those same curbs also serve as a stormwater conveyance system, we also take a portion of it, which has been $100,000. This year, we're recommending that that amount be increased to $200,000. Even with that, members of the commission, there are a lot of curbs in this town that need to be replaced. We've gone to a newer method. We use high back curb, but it's low high back curb that matches the same height as the rollback curb, because in addition to bad materials over a number of years, there's a significant amount of anecdotal evidence that shows that people parking on the rollback curb isn't healthy for the rollback curb. So we're asking for, out of the Transportation Fund, $400,000, and that is simply an ongoing project. You see it in there for time eternal for the next 5 years. Annual street preservation program is up from, for the past 3 years, has been $800,000. At staff's recommendation, we maintain, or we're recommending maintaining that particular amount. That's on page 98 out of the transportation fund. Right-of-way infrastructure repairs, this is another significant change. This year, 2018-2019, called for the last of the sidewalk gap program to be in place for $75,000. It had been at $150,000 and been stepping down over the years. This is the last year of identified sidewalk in the sidewalk program. We still intend to get to the last 2 sections with that $75,000, but we are asking that the total amount, the title of the project, be changed from sidewalk gap program to right-of-way infrastructure repairs. There, as we're getting through with the gaps in the sidewalk, we occasionally get requests for repairs to sidewalk. We occasionally get requests that are a little bit out of the way and not within the curb replacement program for sections of curb that have deteriorated rapidly since the last review. So we're asking that this be, the 75 be raised to 150 and that the 150 be continued out of the transportation fund, so that in future years, we can identify sidewalks on a yearly basis that need repair. And if we don't use up the whole 150 with that, we can divert that to the never-ending curb program that's also in place and add additional funds to that. In a year where there are no sidewalks identified, that would mean a total of $753,250,000 in curb replacement that we could get to in any given year. Mr. Crass has indicated that that may be about the top end that we can get done in any season without going to just a myriad of contractors and try to keep it to 1 to 2 contractors in any season. Next item out of the transportation fund is the Shadowwood settlement investigation. On page 104, and I'm going to ask Mr. Crass to actually speak to that one.
We've noticed over time that there's some significant displacements of driveways, sidewalk, road within the Shadowwood subdivision. There are some very deep storm sewers there. There's also tree issues that are causing sidewalk heaves. We also notice a lot of settlements in yards over sewer services. So this project will involve probably engaging a geotechnical firm to do some soil borings, meeting with the residents, seeing what they're seeing with regards to these settlements, and develop a comprehensive plan for the neighborhood to address these issues.
Thank you, Mr. Crass. And any time during this presentation is something that really hits you forcefully, by all means, just ask. I'll get to the out-year discrete projects after I finish next year. Again, next year is where the action is. I know that's why you all are on the edge of your seats tonight, so I want to get through those first. A transportation project, but out of a different fund, the excise tax fund. You'll remember that when I first came on, up until the point when I became city manager, the excise tax funds were strictly used for new road, and the only new road that we had actually built was Dean Avenue. We checked on the actual wording of the ballot during the election, and it does permit maintenance to be done on major thoroughfares within the city, so we've begun to supplement the normal road work we're doing with excise tax funds. And that's for $200,000 in next year and in outgoing years as well. Out of the capital improvement fund, we'd like to get Hawk Ridge Park security cameras put in, as well as TB Hanna Park security cameras put in to increase the security in the area. We do see vandalism in both of those parks. With the new improvements that are going to be done at both of those, there'll be a significant amount of traffic through them, and now there'll actually be infrastructure that people can vandalize at both locations. So we want to be conscious of the increased need for security there. Those will be constantly monitored down in the police department. Projector and screen for the Raymore Activity Center slated to come before the city council for final approval and acceptance of that building at either next Monday night's meeting or 2 weeks from then. The only thing that it is really lacking at this point, it's got a first-class sound system, but so that we can take projection, movie night in the park, actually use this as a park if there's inclement weather and be able to use that, as well as use it for major presentations that might take place there if we're having an auto show or whatever in that building, because I'm told you can put automobiles onto that new floor. The out of the Stormwater Sales Tax Fund, the annual curb replacement program, again, this is the additional $200,000. Culvert replacement, this is on page 88, Jefferson near Adams. Mr. Crass.
There is a large two-cell culvert there just northwest of the Adams Jefferson intersection. The bottom of the culvert has eroded away, just the end of its useful service life, and we've got a number of road settlements, so this project involves removal and replacement of that culvert.
Next item out of that on page 90 is and this particular one is being shared with the Enterprise Capital Maintenance Fund, is replacement of our storm and sanitary sewer camera that we use to go down into the pipes to look for clogs and obstructions that are in those. The one that we have is no longer working. Again, the Shadowwood settlement investigation on page 104 also comes out of this fund. The Memorial Park playground improvements, this would be on page 32 out of Park Sales Tax Fund. This particular playground is the one that is next to the west shelter at Memorial Park and just north of it. All of the equipment there is very outdated. Some of it no longer meets ADA. It's in bad shape, needs replacement sooner than later. Recreation Park ball field lights on page 34. This puts ball field lights on the smaller fields that are to the south of the big complex that are used for t-ball and for some softball. So we'll be able to better utilize those for evenings and tournaments. Recreation Park ball field lights, park maintenance facility building apron. I'm sorry, that's in and out year. I'll come back to that. Recreation Park Pond, for any of those of you who've been over to Recreation Park or were there for the RAC grand opening, you note that that particular pond is in very bad shape. It's gone very, very shallow. The algae buildup on it has become really bad, and it's not retaining water the way it should and is contributing to flooding downstream, if you will, which is to the west, which is a contributing factor to a project that we've actually proposed to the council with the additional funds that are available out of the general fund balance. To the west side, the entire sidewalk that's part of the trail system there gets flooded with a little over a foot of water after even a moderate rain at this point. This is one half of the equation to cure that problem, along with putting in new sidewalk and raising it up on a boardwalk. The recreation, the Memorial Park Arboretum light replacement. In Memorial Park, there are the old-fashioned lights that used to mark the trail there, but now they're going to be used to actually mark and beautify the Arboretum area. The trail doesn't necessarily meander through there like it used to, but this will be a nice addition to the Arboretum that sits there. Next item on the list, down on Sewer Connection Fund for next year, is a $500,000 item. The City Council has just, in the last few weeks, taken possession of the Herald Estates lift station. So now it's owned by the city rather than the residents of Herald Estates. They are paying an amount to contribute either to this particular project or to long-term maintenance that needs to go into place if we are going to hold on to that as a lift station. Because we now have that lift station, and as Mr. Crass is fond of saying, we'd like to get out of the lift station business. We are proposing to run the line that would inevitably have to be installed sooner or later between that lift station, which is right on Kentucky Road on the north side of Harold Estates, directly across between the property lines of Mason Banks to the north, who has the property on the north there, all the way over to Fox Ridge, and Foxwood Springs on the south, to run that line right down that property line, cost of $500,000 out of the sewer connection fee fund. Out of the Enterprise Capital Maintenance Fund, sanitary sewer and inflow reduction, $126,075 on page 74. This particular project, and I've said it for the last 2 years, I know I said it to the Planning and Zoning Commission as well last year, this has silently and quietly been one of the most successful projects the city has had. You don't see the results of it unless internally you realize the complete and drastic drop in sewer claims that we have with sewer backing up into people's basement during significant rain events has dropped to almost zero because of this program. Owen Goods force main repairs, we had conducted a study, 3-4 years ago now, Mike? And the study incorporated 2 different areas. One was the Owen Good Station main that comes up to 58, and this component of the study that was just completed this past summer looked north of 58 and then all the way down as far as our line is concerned until it eventually drains to Independence, where, as I always say, it naturally belongs. The amount of damage to the pipe to the north of 58 is extensive, and so at almost the last minute we received the results of the study. This was the last item that was plugged into the CIP for recommendation, $700,000 worth of repairs that need to be done. Evanbrook sewer repair, this actually is a repair that we are required to do on the Southwest Interceptor line that is not in the city. A component of the line that is in Dutchman Acres has become exposed, and we need to get down there because it's our line and get it repaired. $18,000, and you can see the location on the map on page 78. Again, the storm sanitary sewer camera portion that's coming out of here, the additional $55,000. Hydrant repair on page 112. Each year we survey about a quarter of the city's hydrants, and there are some of them that have been found to be in need of repair. There is actually one that we have informed South Metro is not working at all. The Star Drive water main, we began this project this year. This will complete water main replacement, much needed repair, $53,000 down in Morning View. Those are the projects for fiscal year 2018-2019. For out years, we have, of course, the ongoing curb replacement, street preservation, right-of-way infrastructure repairs that I've already talked to you about in like amounts of $400,000, $800,000, and $150,000 for each of those. 58 highway access modifications at Kentucky Road. The Kentucky Road is one of our most significant accident intersections. Once New Kentucky, relocated Kentucky, fill in the name here, goes in, something is going to happen with the unregulated intersection that is Old Kentucky as it gets to 58 Highway. We are having a comprehensive traffic study done of the area. By then we will have received the results of that, have a recommendation from consultant, but something's going to have to be done at that particular intersection. Again, maintenance of thoroughfare routes at $200,000 out of the excise tax will continue through those years. The annual curb replacement program is recommended to continue at the same amount through the next 4 years. Then we get to some discrete projects within the park sales tax, and a number of them. A dog park is already scheduled and programmed in the park sales tax fund for $225,000. There has been a recommendation as to location, but that is not set in stone yet. There are a number of locations that would be ideal for this that staff is still working through for final recommendation on that dog park. Park maintenance facility building apron. In this year, we are putting up fencing for security around the park maintenance facility. This will continue the enhancements around there. The apron will actually be on the southwest or southeast corner and extend both ways, that particular apron, but will mainly serve the primary garage door on the east side of the park maintenance facility. $75,000 on page 36. Recreation park playground equipment. If we could get this accelerated, we would, but this is the first year we'll be able to fund this expensive a project. If you utilize the recreation park primary playground, you know it's beginning to show some significant signs of wear and tear. This would call for a complete replacement of everything that's out there. In fiscal year 2021-22, on page 48, archery is gaining in popularity dramatically. We have had a temporary archery range up on the north side of Hawk Ridge Park, and it was a wildly successful program this year. So in one of these out years, we'd like to really beef up and get first-class equipment for that particular program. This amount will hopefully also allow us to bring that same equipment indoors and use the rack for an archery range for indoor tournaments. Very, very popular, especially with private schools in the area, and they pay really good dollars to rent those facilities and have those archery tournaments. Recreation Park Pavilion Playground. Once the rack is completed, next thing on the list is to tear down the park house, which is still sinking into the middle of the earth, the same as it was last year. Once the park house is down on that same location, we're going to be building a shelter and a pavilion and a playground in that location. This calls for the pavilion portion of it. The Hawk Ridge Park, the next playground to be programmed for there, as you all know, we're extremely excited about the all-inclusive playground that we're going to be kicking off major fundraising efforts for and getting donations for here in just the next couple of weeks. This would be the next playground program for there in 2021-22, $150,000, and it's an all-natural, all-nature themed type playground. Then a whole series of discrete projects, and again, these are already programmed and are capable of being sustained within the Park Sales Tax Fund for TB Hanna, all of those in the out years of 22-23, which include Adams and Olive Street parking similar to the angled parking that is now on the north side of the park. This would bring that angled parking all the way around the park to be able to support all the new programs that are going in there, including the ice skating rink, the splash park, the playground that's going to be going in there in the next 12 months. TB Hanna Park corner boundaries, these are more of a beautification, if you will, of the park. Each of the four corners would have an entry, kind of a gateway, exactly like what is currently on the southeast corner where the flagpole is over at TB Hanna. Special event lighting, this isn't all year lighting. It is a kind of a hanging lighting that we could use to put up around the trail for the Mayor's Christmas tree lighting on those types of evening. More of a pavilion lighting, I think, is how Mr. Mustine describes it. Landscaping and earthwork that still will remain to be done to complete the beautification over there. Needs a monument sign to identify the park itself, and some additional furniture for under the pavilion and near the splash park, which will be very popular and draw a lot of people to the area. And then Mr. Crass has proposed, because there are going to be events that require blocking off the parking areas that are associated with the depot, that not just be a normal swing gate purchase, but that we actually replicate when a train is coming and the bars go down, it would actually look like those. So he put on his imagination hat and came up with those for us. Recreation Park Baseball Complex scoreboards, these are actually going to be donated, but a portion of these are actually going to be donated, but we will actually need matching funds out of park sales tax, $41,184. And then the sanitary sewer inflow and infiltration projects to be continued and increased a little bit for inflation in each of those years. What does next year represent? I identified the projects that I've just now listed to you for 2018, 2019 in one of three categories: maintenance, improvement that has been identified as necessary, and enhancement, which would be, as an example of maintenance, obviously curb maintenance, improvement, the Kentucky Road, whatever we're going to end up doing up there. An enhancement would be a dog park, an actual new project, the camera systems going into the parks. So within the 18-19 budget, of the 24 discrete projects, 17 of them are identified as maintenance, 1 of them is identified as improvement, 6 of them are identified as enhancement. When I was speaking with the council about the overall budget this year, I reminded them several times at that meeting that I found myself very much this year in, it is a maintenance type of year for the city. We're trying to complete the bond projects, which are always an enhancement. Because we're growing so fast, we have the need for the maintenance to be done. We're seeing a lot of use of our infrastructure that's unprecedented compared to previous years. So you would expect a majority of the projects to be in there. That 17 in maintenance represents 71% of the projects themselves. The 1 improvement, 4%, and enhancements, 25%. The dollars associated with these, maintenance, $3,255,075 of the $3,949,200 total. The improvement project, $500,000 for the Herald of States improvement. Enhancement projects, $194,125 of the $3,949,200. That represents maintenance projects of 82% of the total dollars, improvement projects 13% of the total dollars, enhancement projects 5% of the total dollars. So I think you can kind of see it's a year where we got to keep things up. With any luck, on the near horizon, we're going to be, because of the growth that is causing the need for maintenance, we think that we're going to be able to see a much accelerated next pass at a no tax increase bond issue that will be of a material amount. We were a little bit worried that if we went for it too early, it was going to be, there'd be dollars there to get things done, but when you do something like that, you want to make sure that you hit everybody's need, if you will. So the same growth that is leading to the maintenance will lead to being able to come back around to some enhancement projects, I'm sure, in the near future. At this time, that concludes staff report, and I am here for any questions that the commission may have.
Thank you, Mr. Fearborn. If commission is okay with this, I think at this point, maybe I'll open the public hearing, get comments before we bring Mr. Fearborn back to the podium for questions. How's that sound? Public input next? Okay. So before I open the public hearing on case 18014, if you choose to speak on this case, we'd ask you to come forward to the podium, give us your name and address for the record. And I don't think it's going to be a problem tonight, but we normally ask that you limit comments to 5 minutes or some reasonable amount. I don't see an overwhelming amount of public this evening. So having said that, I'll open the public hearing on case 18014. Would anyone like to speak on this case? Okay. Didn't want you to have to wait all night. So maybe I will go ahead and close the public hearing. Mr. Fearborn, you're your move to the podium is very wise, I'm sure, and the floor is open for questions from the commissioners. I know somebody's going to. Who'd like to start?
I don't have any questions, more of just
Commissioner
comments.
Wiggins.
Thank you, sir. Fantastic work by the city as always. I was writing down some of these numbers, maintenance taking up a large majority of the tasks, the projects, and the money, and I realize that maintenance projects aren't sexy, but those are probably the things that you all and council members probably get a lot of calls on. My sidewalks, my curbs, my road. They're the things that cost a lot of money, take a lot of time, take a lot of city resources, but those are the things that we all probably take for granted and don't realize how much it costs to fix a road in front of your house that's rutted out because semi trucks drive down it or whatever the case may be. So, things seem very well thought out. Just appreciate all the information and all the input that you guys do, and personally, I think it sounds pretty awesome.
Thank you, Commissioner Wiggins. Commissioner Urquilla.
I do have just kind of one question / comment in regards to, call it the Park and Rec plan. I noticed there's some improvements to the baseball fields and as well as the rec center and things that we have going around. I was just curious if the city has done any research or looked at any information as far as maybe improving our soccer fields. I know that currently the nicest fields are located at Swope Park in Kansas City or Overland Park and their facility. Having grown up playing soccer and being involved in soccer, I know that it's a continually growing in popularity sport, and I think there's a huge lack in the South Kansas City side on the Missouri side for nice facilities. I know currently the closest turf field would be at the high school itself, which obviously is while public in nature, also reserved for the students of the schools. And I was just curious if there's been any thought or effort put behind maybe looking at something around here that might attract tournaments and things of that nature on the soccer side of things.
Thank you. Great question. On a number of levels, soccer, not just soccer fields and not just the type that we have where they're at, but also discussions about possible future monies going to a complex itself and what that complex would look like. As you know, there are swirling discussions that fit into that conversation from a public standpoint relative to a number of private complexes in the area that we could either partner with or would factor into size type that we would eventually be looking at for ourselves. The key is going to be able to get them in the right location. So we are on a vigilant review of available land that would come up that we could use for such a complex, how much it would cost. Rewind to my earlier conversation about a bond issue, perhaps. But it is at the forefront of the CIP committee's conversations. And if I could expound on that for just a minute in a slightly different direction, and thank you for your kind words, Commissioner. The number of hands that goes into this is equal to the number of hands that go into the budget overall. We actually expanded the CIP committee, who are the people who make the recommendations to me ultimately that I have to make decisions on. We expanded the membership of the CIP committee this year. Before this, it was primarily myself, Ms. Watson from Finance, Nate Mustine from Public Works, and Mr. Crass, and occasionally Mr. Cataret from the standpoint of is it a community development involved project. That's been very much expanded. We now include Matt Tapp from the standpoint of how's this going to impact, and this would be a project that he would have significant impact on, sir. We include the chief because, and I can't remember the exact phrase for it, but all of these projects, as they're being built, chief would primarily be the one responsible for you're seeing security cameras go in. When the rack was being built, how it's situated on there, how environmentally is that going to impact us relative to being able to patrol the area, see into the area. So that committee, which gives me invaluable input, I just want to thank them for all the input that they give and assure the commissioners that it has not only been a successful project to go with the expansion of the committee, but they now meet year-round. They meet once a week, year-round. Before this, we kind of amped up into the CIP projects, but it's going to be a valuable resource for us going forward. Short form, yes, sir.
And, and it was a selfish question, but overall, with everything you presented, I'm very pleased with where we're headed as a city and excited for what's on the horizon.
Thank you,
I don't want
Commissioner.
to take anything away from that, but yeah, thank you.
Other commissioners? Commissioner Fizer.
Last year, I think on this list, there was a thing about adding light poles, and I know one of the places was the corner of Fox Ridge Drive in Johnston, and I was really excited about that because it's a very dark and spooky corner, and if the school is having a function, the school lights are on, and then it's not bad, but otherwise it's just a really long stretch that's dark, and that was on the list last year, but it hasn't happened yet. I don't know if maybe it's still in the works, or is
Mr.
that
Grass.
still a possibility?
Yes, it's in the works. We'll be presenting a recommendation to Mr. Fearborn shortly and moving forward to council to with a contract for that work.
Okay, thanks.
Other questions, comments? My turn. Okay, so Mr. Fearborn, if I really wanted to dig, I probably could have done it myself, but how does the 2019 amount, 3.9 million roughly, compare to the budget for 2018?
For discrete projects, slightly more, just slightly.
Let
But
me
if you
ask
look
the
at the
question.
budget overall,
Yeah.
because last year the CIP included the last of all the bond issue projects.
Right.
If you just look at the bottom line number, it would look like it's almost half of last year's. But if
Okay.
you take the bond issue projects out, it's just slightly more.
So if I dug out last year's presentation, I'd be shocked to see that this was only about half.
Correct, sir.
But in terms of ongoing, tell me that again, about the same, or?
Just a little bit more. I want to say,
Yeah,
and don't quote me on this one, but I think it's about $170,000 more.
okay, very, very much same order of magnitude, though.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Okay, that's good to know. Feel free to call in Mr. Crass on this as applicable. So the Shadowwood settlement leaves a question in my mind. In past, I think we've heard about settlement issues in Ward Park Place, as I recall. One of the subdivisions out on Ward Road, and if it wasn't Ward Park Place, I can't think which other one it might have been. Are we under control there? Do we have similar concerns there to Shadowwood with driveways settling and so forth?
I think a lot of those the difference with the ones in Ward Park Place is there was significant wetlands that were filled in for those,
Okay.
for that home construction. So that's more on the private, it's more related to the private infrastructure. There were some roadway settlements, but those have been addressed through roadway repairs. But any of the other settlements out in Ward Park Place are really mostly on private property and related to the soil
Okay,
conditions.
but the city, what I would consider city obligations, we've got that pretty well under control?
Yes, sir.
Okay, which explains why I'm not seeing it. Third question, and I apologize, I'm not sure what page, but the Herald Estates, I'm going to call it the Herald Estates sewer line, potentially switching over from force main to gravity feed. Lift station, thank you. Do we already own the right-of-way or have the right-of-way already as an easement for that gravity line, or does that have to be acquired?
We would have to get the easement, depending on the location of the line, we'll either have to get the entire easement. If we go a little bit to the north, the entire easement will come from Mr. Mason Banks. If we go entirely to the south, Foxwood Springs. If we go right down the middle, both of them.
Okay, but it's not a done deal. We don't have the easement.
We do, to the extent that we do not have the easement, no. We have had conversations with Mr. Banks, and he's amenable.
Oh, good.
It'll just be a question, and I know what you have to remember is whoever gets the line gets $500,000 worth of improvements that they don't have to put in at future development.
Well, that's a nice enticement. It seems like a good idea anyway, with all the undeveloped land nearby, and potentially, you know, we're not out of land to develop, but that would seem like a prime area given the existing development.
And when you read the description, Mr. Chair, for what the sewer connection fee should be used for, this exactly fits that descriptor.
That's good.
To create future development and
Yeah.
get us out of long-term maintenance.
So it's nice when we follow our rules.
That's exactly right.
I did note, and I will say this is probably a pet peeve of mine, or a pet item of interest, since I used to live on the Belton side of the Raymore city limits, but I did note with some disappointment that the 163rd Street project has basically disappeared from CIP entirely and has not yet come back.
It is still on the 10-year road plan, but it is not feasible with the amount of money that's going to take
Right.
to actually put it through. And every single time we start to talk about resurrecting it as a public project, you hear, well, somebody's going to be buying that for development, which logically would.
Yeah, potentially could incur or could at least defray the costs. I kind of have mixed feelings, and I guess I've lived in Kansas City area now, Belton or Raymore, for 40 years, but one of the things that I've always observed was when I go over to Kansas side, and we're talking probably north of 435 and going west to Metcalf particularly, but it seemed like I observed Kansas typically put in a lot of infrastructure first, then developed Missouri side, and I'm certainly not singling out Raymore, but Missouri side typically got the development and then said, oh, we need to fix the infrastructure. And it always seemed, preferable, if you will, easier to manage when the infrastructure goes in first rather than always playing catch up. That said, I completely understand the funding. Citizens of Raymore probably wouldn't particularly appreciate paying a large cost to help a developer out on a project that benefited only a part of Raymore.
It is, and of course we saw in last year's CIP 2 new roads that we put the infrastructure in ahead of time, but we had development imminent, and in both of those, the developer had also placed skin in the game.
Right, and if I remember those, and I do remember those too, but those were not quite anywhere close to the magnitude of 163rd. They were a lot easier to bite off.
Exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
It makes sense. I definitely think we need to be smart about it. I just really don't want to lose sight of the eventual need for 163rd Street, because I can definitely see we have, a lot of us go from Raymore to the city, Raymore still being somewhat of a bedroom community, and there are just a few ways to get there. And I think 163rd Street in the big picture would be another benefit.
I agree.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate that. Questions, comments from other commissioners? All quiet. Mr. Zerg. I think that we will be looking for a motion and a vote to recommend adoption of the CIP beginning November 1st, 2018 to City Council.
That's correct. Recommending approval if that's the commission's inclination,
Well-
and forwarding the same to the city council for their consideration.
Yeah, we need a motion, then we can see if we approve, right?
I will move to accept case number 18014, the 2019 to 2023 Capital Improvement Program, as presented this evening, to be forwarded on to City Council for consideration.
Second.
Okay. Mr. Zer, that sound okay to you? Motion by Commissioner Arquilla, second by Commissioner Crane, to accept case 18014, Capital Improvement Program for fiscal year beginning November 1st, 2018, and forward to City Council with recommendation of approval. Does that sound sort of like what you said? Is there any discussion on the motion? All those in favor, raise a hand, please. 2, 4, 5, 6. We have 6 in favor, none opposed, and no abstentions. Mr. Fearborn, thank you very much. That was nicely done. Okay, let me get myself oriented again. Mr. Zer, it's time for a City Council report, I believe.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm happy to provide the report this evening. Since the last meeting of the Planning and Zoning Commission on August 21st, 2018, there has been one City Council meeting that I will be able to report on, which occurred on August 27th, 2018. There are 2 items from that council report that I'd like to provide. The first is the council reviewed for the second reading and voted to approve the 2018 tax levy. That is a equivalent of a no tax increase levy for the coming year. The second vote that they of importance for this commission was the 28th Amendment to the UDC. It was a first reading and a public hearing, which was completed, and you'll recall that included the proposed changes from this commission, with the exception of the sidewalks, which has been removed for further discussion. The 28th Amendment to the UDC had its first reading, a public hearing, and was approved by the City Council, and will be on for the next City Council meeting for a second reading. That concludes the City Council report. I welcome the mayor, who participates regularly in that, for additional input if he thinks there's anything else to add.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Zer. Mr. Grass, would you like to start the staff report, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Looking ahead of the upcoming meetings, we have a very busy September ahead of us. At our next meeting on September 18th, the Commission will have a chance to review a proposed industrial development that has been proposed down by the North Cass Interchange. That project will involve the rezoning of the current zoning classification that is Business Park to a planned unit development that will provide some flexibility in the design of the site overall. That will also include on that application a review and potential approval for a proposed site plan for that development. So staff is currently reviewing that project right now, going back and forth to the applicant, and we'll bring that project forth to you all on our September 18th meeting. Looking ahead to the October 2nd meeting, the first meeting in October, another very large, exciting project that's been proposed in the Eagle Glen subdivision. A developer has come forth and proposed a luxury multifamily development on that parcel, which is just south of 58 Highway on the west side of Fox Ridge Drive. And that project includes the reclassification of the existing zoning, which is R3A, to a R3B. Which would allow the development of the proposed residential apartment community. That application will also require a revision to the existing preliminary plat that exists for the Eagle Glen subdivision, a final plat for the project, as well as a site plan for the proposed development overall. So 2 very exciting projects ahead of us, upcoming in the next couple months, and staff will be working on those projects to bring them forth to you all at our next coming meetings. There are currently no applications scheduled for the October 16th meeting, but there are a couple projects that are kind of looming out there at the moment, and we will proceed with those as those applications are filed. That will conclude staff report. I would call on Mr. Crass for any updates as they pertain to Public Works.
Yep.
Thank you. Good evening,
Mr. Kress.
Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. Number of things in the Public Works Engineering pipeline. On the maintenance side, the crews in between the rainstorms have been busy restriping the major arterial roads in the city. Our roadway maintenance project is underway. The microsurfacing project, they were working on Dean Avenue last week. They started Fox Ridge Drive today. Hawk Ridge Park construction is in full swing. We anticipate that project being finished in early March. Being presented to council for consideration Monday night is the third phase of the 155th Street reconstruction, which is Madison Street to Kurzweil. On the development side, Prairie View, the Good Ranch is under final review. We anticipate that project starting shortly. We are also in the process of reviewing site plans for the projects that Mr. Gress mentioned. That concludes staff report.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Kress. Commissioner Urquilla.
I noticed on the corner of J and 58 by the Casey's just to the west that there's some dirt moving, and I couldn't recall what was going in there.
Out east?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that a daycare?
We'll let Mr. Kress answer, or Mr. Gress, sorry.
The existing Brightside daycare that exists within that commercial subdivision that exists currently today, they're expanding their daycare facility. That was approved back in May, I believe, of this year.
Mm-hmm. And that's the one that potentially had an event center with it, or at least shown as future development?
Correct.
Yeah, if that rings any bells. Okay. Any other questions for Mr. Gress, Mr. Kress? I'll open the floor one more time for public comment this evening. And seeing no one, I'll open the floor for commission member comment. Let's start with you this evening, Commissioner Urquilla.
As always, appreciative of the staff and everything you guys do. Appreciate you being here tonight, Mr. Manager, and for your thorough and easy to follow report. I definitely appreciate the time and effort put in to look at what the city needs, and excited about the future of Raymore. So thank you all.
Yeah, Commissioner Crane.
I too enjoyed the capital improvement budget. As a retired accountant who pours through everything, I thought it was well put together and really appreciated it.
Yeah, thank you. I guess I should have said Secretary Crane. Vice Chair Fizer.
I actually have no comment.
Oh, all right. Commissioner Wiggins.
No additional comment other than the comments made earlier of all the great work that staff did.
Sure. Mayor Turnbow.
The only thing I would say was surprisingly consistent with what I heard a week ago. So, thank you, Jim. I know it takes a lot of work. I do appreciate everything that you and your team put into it. And thank you. That's all I have.
Yeah, considering that with the growth of Raymore, we're always trying to hit a moving target, aren't we, Mr. Feuerborn? So the consistency, a whole week passed and it's still the same. That's good. I don't have much else to add. Thank you to staff. We missed Mr. Cataret and Mr. Rokos this evening, but on the other hand, we're glad to have Mr. Gress, Mr. Kress. Always good to see you, Mr. Zur, and Mr. Feuerborn. I don't think it hurts for us to say once more, thank you very much. I thought that was a very well organized presentation. There's a lot of material there, and I'm not an accountant, but I did read through it as well. And I thought, say again? I have the finest team in the world. Well, and I appreciate your mention, because I know that Planning and Zoning Commission, keeping us going, takes quite a large amount of city staff. Obviously, the city takes quite a large amount of staff to keep it running. And what's our population now? 21,000? And change. So growth is good. Managing growth is even better, my take. Unless anyone has any other comments, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
I motion that we adjourn.
I'll second.
Motion by Commissioner Wiggins, second by Commissioner Arkia to adjourn this evening's meeting. All those in favor, raise a hand, please. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 in favor, none opposed, no abstentions. Thank you all very much.
Bernie, have they even talked about managing it yet?
Another there's dopamine replacements. And some things that they can do. She told me.
We all need that. We all need that.
I've been cleaning out this for those.
Well, that's enough exercise.
I'll tell you, man, wild rose bushes do that.